At dinner's first prayer, the cousin breaks silence by sliding the sealed velvet box across the table, fingertips leaving crescents on the wood. When he lifts the lid, the small silver compass inside skitters free, pointing away from everyone, the needle trembling as if searching for permission. The air tightens around that gesture. The compass refuses to settle unless someone names the missing direction. Why won't it rest? The prayer ends with a soft amen. Voices folding back into the hum of cutlery and the clink of china rims. Aunt May sets down the ladle, its broth streaking a path across the turene's warm porcelain. Candles gutter a mild orange glow. The cousin rests both hands on the velvet box, fingers lingering over the compass as if memorizing its chill before placing it between the bowls of rice and roasted squash. Across from him, father reaches for the salt shaker, palms spreading welcome and caution in equal measure. The niece giggles at the tail of the slab of bread she tried to pull from the oven, which cracked in two like a smile. The cousins exchange a glance that says nothing more than, "I remember the summer's laugh," and the silence between them feels comfortably practiced. Outside, cicadas keep their steady buzzing cadence, a background rhythm to the clink of glass and the small scrape of a chair. The compass needle jitters again, and when no one speaks, it simply trembles in quiet insistence. The only deviation from the measured, solemn dance of forks and conversation. The screen glows cold blue as Miriam hits rewind again. The chronicle footage stutters through the charity banquet from 2 summers ago, the same banquet where Uncle Jerome pinned the grant check and then slipped his leather wallet under the table. Miriam's thumb leaves smear marks on the remote plastic each time she presses pause. The camera catches her own hands on the table, folded tight, then her head shaking once as she watches Jerome wink at the councilman and whisper something that makes his eyes go cold. On the next pass, the microphone picks up her own whispered, "I'll let it pass," to cousin Lian, who looks down, mouth twisting, a knot of anger and shame beneath the smile everyone thinks is gratitude. Miriam rips the remote out of her lap and sets it on the couch with a thud. The screen skips to her grandfather's study, where the projector beams light through dust and the ledger page where Aunt Rosa scribbled "silent approval" next to 3 names that later got the land warranties. The more she watches, the more the pattern repeats. A promise made in a quiet hallway, a look exchanged over bowls of stew, a handshake that freezes a mouth. She plants her feet on the rug, palms on her hips, and the chair creaks backward as she stands. She hits pause and snatches the journal from the coffee table, flipping to a list of dates and tiny, angry arrows pointing to which family member was ignored that week. The latest entry is today's date, the arrow pointing to her own name with a bracket that says, "Didn't speak up." She slams the cover down hard enough for the air to hiss between the pages. The phone buzzes. "Aunt Rosa." Miriam answers on speaker, voice low but steady. "You were at the gallery, weren't you?" she demands before Rosa can say hello. The aunt's laugh is brittle. "Miri, you're home. That's all that matters. Jerome left the same gala with my father. The grant money was redirected the day after. I watched you write silent approval in ink I can't shake off." The words come out quick, like a shove. Rosa's breath hitches. "You don't understand what was happening. I watched you sign the contracts with your thumb over the clause about the river lot. I watched myself nod and go quiet." Miriam spreads her fingers, the phone between them, voice sharper. "I'm not letting that be a tradition anymore." There's a pause. The aunt's voice dips so low, Miriam almost can't hear her. "If you keep digging, there will be more than your old footage. People will start asking why you're airing it." "I already started asking." Miriam lets the sentence marinate like a threat. She hears the little click of the record button on her own phone, the one she left open with the footage playing in the background. Rosa swallows. "Don't make this bigger," she whispers. "You have to decide what you want to carry." Miriam closes her fingers around the journal again and flips it open to the blank page she left to write a plan. She sets it back down without writing. Instead, she says, "I'm going to show Lian this. I'm going to show him every time we let our silence be a lie." The wordless pause on Rosa's side stretches. Then the aunt says, "Then start with telling him what you saw." And the line goes dead. Miriam presses the phone to her ear for a long second, letting the silence hum. Then she turns back to the screen as the footage flickers on. The clock beside it ticks toward midnight. She hits play, knowing that the pattern is now visible to her, and that the breath she takes before watching the next betrayal is no longer the same. The tablet glows blue in the low light as Cam presses play. Great-uncle Calix's thin, careful voice fills the kitchen, the footage frozen on the day he announced a supposed family pact. "Loyalty is how we survive," he says, then smiles as if the smile were a door closing. Miriam leans against the counter, arms crossed, watching the way Calix's eyes darted from person to person. Cam rewinds a breath, pinpoints the second where Calix whispers, "If you question me, you fracture us," and taps the screen. He was literally teaching us to police our own mouths. Cam snaps, thumb hovering over the pause button in case a defense arrives. Miriam's fingers find the ceramic mug she was filling, setting it down with a clack. "He made Rosa a quieter girl," Cam says, voice tight. But the footage ties the betrayals to him, not just to the stories everyone repeated. He weaponized loyalty. They march toward the back door where Rosa has been slicing limes for the afternoon drink bin. Cam sets the tablet on the wooden table between the women, plays the clip again, and doesn't let Rosa move before the sentence speaks for itself. Rosa freezes, hands dripping juice, eyes flicking between the screen and the women. Cam doesn't soften the edge. "You kept it bottled because you feared breaking him would break the clan," Cam says. "But I kept it bottled too. I let loyalty excuse my lips staying sealed." Rosa tries to shuffle blame to the past. "It was Calix, not me," she begins. But Cam steps closer, thumb hitting pause. "No, we both stayed silent. That's on us." The air compresses, then stretches when Rosa's jaw loosens. For a heartbeat, her hand hovers over the knife. "If this goes anywhere, the room will explode," she whispers. But it's a plea, not a threat. Cam pulls the tablet toward them and lifts the chronicle of a different night, a ledger with names, dates, amendments. "I'm showing Lian," Cam says, sliding the tablet back. "Not tomorrow, now. She deserves to see how loyalty was used to shush injustice. I'm not wrapping it in excuses anymore." Miriam grabs 2 envelopes, evidence copies, and stuffs them into her bag with a tight snap. Rosa exhales, thin and quick. "You'll keep me in the picture then?" she asks. Cam nods, not blinking. "You stay, but you don't deflect. You answer for every time you chose quiet." Rosa's shoulders drop, as if the weight she pretended to bear is finally handed back. A tremor runs across her face, then vanishes. Her lips set, admitting something without saying it aloud. Cam tucks the tablet under her arm, Miriam's hand brushing her back in a small, grounding press. They head toward the door with the chronicled evidence, their footsteps quick. The plan is simple and irrevocable now. Learn Lian's schedule, show her the footage, and make the ancestors' manipulative loyalty public, along with their own complicit silence. There is no going back to pretending obedience equals love. The door opens, and light floods the room as they step outside, the weight of the action still rippling inside them. Cam glances at Miriam. A brief exhale shared between two people who have moved from knowing to doing, from waiting to acting. Cam and Miriam set up the chronicle projector on Lian's kitchen counter, while oil from the evening's dinner still clung to the pan beside them. Lian sat stubborn in the chair by the fridge, arms crossed, jaw working. Miriam slid the memory chip out of its case and tapped it onto the reader. "We're not here to beg," she said, voice low. "We're here to show you what you've been hiding from yourself." Cam stepped forward, hand hovering over the start button. "Before you see any of this," she said, "I need you to know I was part of keeping it quiet. I watched Calix manipulate us. I watched Rosa use loyalty as a lock, and I did nothing. That's the guilt I inherited. Made me think silence was protection." She pressed play, then stared hard at Lian while the footage flickered to life. "Tonight, I'm handing that guilt to the truth." The screen filled with footage from decades ago. Calix leaning close to a young Rosa, the word loyalty etched into a ledger, Miriam's own face pale as she looked away. Lian's fingers curled into the tabletop, knuckles whitening. Cam slid a photo of a signed letter across the counter, Rosa's handwriting over Cam's own signature, promising never to say a word. Lian barked a laugh that cracked halfway through and then vanished. "You think I didn't know?" she spat. "You all just decided I was the last truth left?" Cam leaned into Lian's space, voice steady. "I think you were the only one who could still hear it without laughing first. I stayed quiet because I wanted to be the nephew who kept the family peace. I finally see peace meant no one saw what was happening to us. That ends now." Miriam thumbed the pause button after a frame showing Rosa guiding Lian's younger self away from the chronicle vault. "We have the full recording," she said. "You can't unsee it, but you can decide who knows it." Lian's shoulders sank, then rose in a breath so slow it sounded like a release valve. She reached out and took the footage stick, fingers trembling. "If I go with you," she whispered, "then I'm not the only liar in the room." Cam nodded. "You never have been. You just needed to see the proof spelled out loud." Lian slid to her feet and held the stick like a small torch. "Show me everything," she said. "No more decisions behind broken words." In the glow of the projector's paused frame, Cam felt the inherited guilt shift, not vanish, but settle as a tool. Miriam clicked back to the beginning. The next reveal would happen with Lian beside them, eyes sharp and open. The sitting room brimmed with the smell of dust and cinnamon from the candles Miriam had brought. Cam pushed a small projector to the center of the cedar table, the chronicle stick already blinking with a steady green. Lian sat on the chaise across from them, hands folded around a cup of cooling tea. The cousin hovered near the doorway, fingers brushing the frame as if to anchor themselves. Miriam slid a stack of printed ledgers across the table, the inked betrayals lined up like a challenge. "No editing," Cam said, voice low as she hit play. The low hum of the projector filled the silence, and the screen flickered to life, with Aunt Rosa's recorded instructions. Lian leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, pupils dilated with each scene. When the footage cut to the room where Calix had leaned over Cam and forced her signature, the cousin opened their mouth and then closed it again, throat working once. A sudden movement at the back of the room made Miriam glance up. Marin, the distant third cousin who split from family gatherings, stepped into the doorway with arms crossed. "You said this was just for Lian," Marin said, voice edged with accusation. "You made a promise." Cam didn't look up. Cam kept quiet for years. Lian said, voice sharp. "Holding it in made you a keeper of something that wasn't yours to hide." Marin stepped closer, the candlelight throwing a strip of shadow across their face. And now you decide to drag. Then explain why those ledger entries line up with Rosa's demands. Miriam interrupted, slamming her palm lightly on the table. Explain why the ledger shows the funds redirected after Calix wrote his letters, and why the chronicle footage matches the voices on the signed paperwork. The room tightened as the projection jumped to the moment Cam accepted the coerced signature, the camera catching her hands, trembling. Lian's fingers curled around the teacup until the porcelain clicked. The cousins started forward, stopped themselves, and then took a breath that rattled through their ribs. She rewound the footage to the earliest betrayal and let it roll past, letting the room fill with the crunch of gravel from Calix's entry, the rustle of Rosa's skirts, the scrape of forged ink. At the final frame, the cousin reached for the chronicle stick and placed it beside the folder, fingers lingering on the cool casing. "Truth hurts," the cousin whispered, barely audible. "But it's the only inheritance I can keep." Lian sat again, hands folded. "Then I'll watch it all," he said, eyes not leaving the screen. "No edits, no excuses." Cam nodded, the corner of her mouth lifting slightly. "And we don't hide it anymore." Marin exhaled, slow and defeated, but didn't leave. The projector blinked to a stop, but the room stayed charged. They had forced the evidence into the open. That was the first victory. No softening, no concealment. Outside, someone in the yard started watering plants. The gentle rush of water a tiny counterpoint to the ripples they'd just sent through the family. The candle burned down, wax pooling on the table. A quiet witness to what had happened inside the room. Truth given without compromise, and another hand willing to hold it. Lian punched the play button again, just to make sure every face caught the replay of Rosa's voice, ordering the ledger's silence. The footage filled the room with that brittle calm only truth can carve. Rosa, clear, sharp, pushing Cam's signature into compliance. Marin's knee bounced under the table. Marin still held the file Cam had dropped, but no longer tried to thumb through it for excuses. "Why?" Lian snapped, not looking at anyone but Rosa. "Why keep us in the dark while you sold our favors to Calix?" Rosa's lips moved, searching for the old deflections. The cousin stood abruptly, documents clutched in one hand, ledger pages fanned out like proof. "You kept me loyal to a lie," the cousin said, "and I handed it to my children thinking that obedience meant safety." Rosa opened her mouth, but Cam stepped between her and the cousin, the chronicle stick still in her palm. "You don't get to clean this up now," Cam said, voice low, "by asking me to forget that I watched you bend the ledger." She slid the footage toward Marin. "You watch it with us. All of you." Anger cracked through Marin's composure. "You used our names," Marin hissed. "You promised fealty to a dead man's ghosts." The cousin pressed the ledger to Marin's chest. "You aren't the only one who hurt." Relief pooled in the cousin's eyes. The truth gave it weight. Now we all know what guilt looks like, and we can stop passing it forward like heirlooms. Rosa's hand trembled as she reached for Cam's shoulder, but Cam's shoulders stayed rigid. "If you think I can just erase what you filmed," Rosa whispered, "you don't know me." Lian leaned in, eyes bright. "We all heard him," she said, pointing to the screen where Calix's manipulative tone looped. "Calix used loyalty to build cages. You—" She jabbed a finger at Rosa. "Built the doors. We're not going back." The room exhaled when Marin finally turned the footage on again, this time with the cousin's children peering through the doorway, the cousin's tiny hands wrapped around the banister as if they were bracing for hurt. They stood there, too, because now they wouldn't be lied to anymore. Lian placed the stick on the table and slid the ledger toward the cousin. "You're taking it," she said. "Let the whole branch read every line." Rosa sank into the chair, the defenses gone. Her shoulders sagged, but she didn't look away. Everyone else shifted. Some shook with fists at their sides, others let their breathing slow, relief mixing with fury. The room held the new truth, spoken, recorded, undeniable, and it wouldn't let them unfurl it back into silence. Rosa stayed cradling the ledger, but her eyes followed Lian as he pulled his chair to the center of the table. "We make a list," he said, voice firm, "so everyone knows exactly what they are responsible for." He grabbed a fresh notebook from the pile Miriam had stacked earlier and slapped it against the wood. "Cam, you start with the entries you hid," he said. "Miriam, you map the dates we'll share with the council." Cam leaned in, the familiar tremor in her fingers steadied by purpose. She took the pen Rosa was still gripping, uncapped it, and began scribbling bullet points. Who to call, which documents to forward, deadlines for each family member to answer. "We send copies to the legal committee by Friday," she said, scratching the line with enough pressure that the words bit through to the next page. Marin stepped forward, taking the ledger from Rosa with both hands. "I'll contact the board and schedule the town hall," Marin said, voice quiet but insistent. "They'll see the chronicle, the recordings, the signatures. No more half-truths." With that, they placed the ledger beside the notebook, fingers lingering on the page where Rosa's name flowed beneath Cam's coerced signature. Their jaw clenched. They stared at Rosa, waiting for something. Maybe remorse, maybe defiance. Rosa finally set the document on the table. She opened her mouth, and the words that came out were not excuses. "I let Calix use my fear," she said, knuckles whitening around the edge of the table. "I signed. I kept quiet. I watched you all suffer." She slid a handwritten note across to Lian, a confession crafted with trembling script. "I'll testify to the council," she added. "I'll hand over every ledger I touched. You don't have to do it through me anymore." The room took a breath, then exhaled. Lian reached for the recorder, pressed a button, and began recounting the plan aloud. "Release the chronicles by week's end. Invite the remaining relatives to witness. Every betrayal logged in a shared archive." He paused, then looked directly at the cousins standing by the window. "I need the cousins to monitor the rollout. The vow won't keep itself." The cousins stepped forward, gripping a page of the ledger as if it were a banner. "I promise," they said. "I'll keep this conversation alive. If anyone goes back to silence, I will bring it to the front. No more protecting names that hurt us." They paced the length of the room, ensuring everyone could see them. "We keep each other honest. I'll report every omission, every delay. Everyone gets a weekly update." Cam's hand lifted to the chronicle stick as Lian pressed him with a list of people to notify. "We need every relative to see how Calix framed loyalty," Cam said, eyes on Rosa now. "And we have to go to the district office with the ledger. Let them audit it. Let them hold us accountable, too." She tapped the pen against the table, punctuating each directive with deliberate force. Miriam slid into the chair by the recorder, fluttering through the documents without hesitation. "I'll organize the materials, summarize the betrayals, and bind them with the ledger copies," she said, already standing. "I'll email the council with a table of evidence tonight. After that, I'm calling the press. No waiting." The cousin nodded, the vow settling into something heavier than words. Marin placed the ledger back in the pile, then slid the confession note beside it. They looked once more at Rosa, then at the family. "We are building repair," they declared, "and we are doing it together." The tension remained. Rosa's eyes flicked between indignation and relief. but the room now held a cadence of instructions, timelines, and names. Plans were being written, calls were already being made, the chronicle was being shared, and the cousin's promise echoed in the space. They would keep everyone accountable, including themselves. A brief silence followed as they each breathed, not forgiving, but ready to act. Lian closed the notebook with a satisfied clap. "Let's move," he said. "We're not done until every relative sees what we see." Lian lifts the slender light stick, the chronicle flickering in the air like a vow. While the cousin steps forward, ledger pages spread wide, each line a pulse of belonging, handing them to Marin before the silence can creep back in. Rosa stands before them, shoulders quiet, mouth shaped around the names she can no longer hide. Her confession hangs in the same breath as the promise that the ledgers she surrendered will go with every relative who once looked away. Cam's voice trembles and steadies as she says her name and then hers alone, and the room feels the shift. No more corners for deceit. The cousin, fingers stained with ink and new purpose, vows aloud to watch the rollout, to catch every omission as it would catch fire. And Lian accepts the pledge with a nod that carries the whole house. Outside, the wind lifts the curtains, as if to bear witness. And inside, the family does not move apart, but stays, pressed together, letting the truth settle like a shared inheritance, irreversible, alive, and finally theirs.